All right, welcome to Frontline, 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. We begin tonight with another boat strike. The U.S. military conducting its latest strike against a suspected drug boat in the eastern Pacific Ocean, killing 2 people, bringing the total number of known boat strikes to 30 and the number of people killed to at least 107 since early September. As Marco Rubio said, if you want to stop seeing drug boats blown up, maybe stop sending drugs to the United States. Plus, a massive win for President Trump, a judge ruling in his favor, this is an odd one, I know, saying that ICE can, in fact, now get access to Medicaid data to track deported illegals living off taxpayer-funded benefits. But Democrats said that illegals don't get Medicaid, so why would there be that? Oh, that's right, they just lied. And busted. A Texas man is facing federal terrorism charges after investigators say he provided bomb-making components and funded someone who thought was an ISIS brother, but it was really just an undercover FBI agent. If convicted, he could get 20 years in prison. That's probably not enough. But first, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Ohio, they're all in the headlines right now for the Somali fraud. But wait until you see New York City's new scheme to literally take private property. Let's do this. And like it. That's the Democrats' motto. Have you heard of the COPA, Community Opportunity to Purchase Act in New York? Probably not, because it was the very brave council passed it in New York City in the middle of the shadow of Christmas. Okay, nobody was watching. This is a new housing bill that falls right in line with what exactly Mamdani has been proposing, which is free housing for all.
We can establish community land trusts to gradually buy up housing on the private market and convert it to community ownership. We can give tenants a right of first refusal to buy out their landlords when buildings go up for sale. And we can fully commit to a new era of social housing, ending subsidies for luxury housing development and using our wealth to build beautiful, high-quality social housing projects that offer good homes and strong communities to everyone.
Yeah, that's how it's worked every time it's been imposed. This is a massive housing grab to remove private home ownership by making the private sale process so massively bureaucratic that you just basically end up bending to the government's will. This applies right now for 4 or more family homes or units. For now, I mean, I'm sure they'll make it worse later, but this guy actually laid it out well.
Step 1, you have to decide that you're going to sell your building. Hold on, you can't list it publicly yet. Step 2, you notify nonprofits to see if they want to buy it. They then have a 30-day window to tell you if they're interested or not. If you don't, it's a $30,000 fine. But here's the bad news. If they are interested, they have up to 120 days to give you an offer. Now, if you don't want to accept that offer, that's when you can put it on the open market. If you put it on the open market and you get an offer that you absolutely love, you then have to offer it back to the city at that same price.
In other words, let's say you own a small building with 6, 8, 10, 12 apartments in it, and you've decided you just want to retire or move or just don't like the business anymore, whatever. And you can't actually sell your own property. And you're thinking like, wait, what? Yeah, this new COPA law is perfectly in line with what all these NGOs, that's how this all ties together. It's all part of this NGO grift, just like the Somalis are doing in Minnesota right now. Ohio had this problem that led to a housing crisis with a law similar to this, when they had NGOs just buying up and renting out local housing units to the poor refugees. Massachusetts, California, wherever, all same thing. Think about that. You now have to request permission from some bureaucrat at New York City Building Department to consider selling your home that you own, which I'm sure that just a pile of people down there in that bureaucracy are super anxious to help you. I think if it's anything like Connecticut, and I'm sure it's worse probably in Manhattan, but one time I was required, I had to go down and get a permit for like a shed that was slightly larger than a bathtub, and ended up walking out there with a bunch of fees and fines, one of which was for not registering the bottom 2 stairs to my frickin' patio. So trust me when I say they're gonna make this difficult, they will. So you go to one of these jagaloons at the building department and ask for permission to list your lawfully owned private property residence. But before you even go to them, you have, as that guy said, have to present this sale to a very ambiguous. I mean, there's not like one list that you can go to access this. So you got to go search out these nonprofits to give them first right of refusal. And at any point during those 60 days to what could be even 6 months, if one even like takes informal interest, they get 120 additional days to dilly-dally or figure out whether or not, you know, it's real interest. But even if no nonprofit is interested, the building department can still say, well, hey, look, we don't feel that you've done a good enough job reaching out to enough nonprofits. And they can actually force you to enter another round of that, further holding back your sale. Keep in mind, this review from the building department could take another few months to approve the fact that you might have done what you were supposed to do by this new law. This whole time, by the way, you're still paying what could be a year's worth of mortgage payments. It's like indentured servitude on your own property, of which the city is just going to inevitably take and turn into ghettos. Mark my words on this. The Democrat dream, take your home and then rent it back to your kids. People like Mamdani and other socialists have had this dream to just own all the property. It's all community property, and this is just the next step. Fortunately, our founding fathers were smarter than them, giving property owners at least 2 sections in the Bill of Rights that I can just name off the top of my head that prevents this type of stupid government control. You got the 4th Amendment, which states, quote, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. Now, okay, if the government won't let you sell your own asset, I think you could I'm not a lawyer, but I think you could pretty easily make the case that you ain't too secure in your house against seizures. Like if you were behind on your mortgage, especially, nowadays where that's happening, and the bank is about to foreclose on you, unless you can sell it, by the way, and then the government holds you up on that sale for a year, and then you can't make a year's worth of payments, and because of that, the bank takes it. I would call that a seizure by the government, by the process. The process became the punishment for the government in order for the government to seize your property. These people are absolutely evil. Anyway, here's another one. The 5th Amendment, specifically the takings clause in the last sentence, quote, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Well, if you're forcing me to sell it to a specific group and I can't sell it to anyone else, a group that is a nonprofit that in many cases gets all of its money, or at least most of it, from the government, seems a lot like the fact that the government is taking it for public use, but like I'm not allowed to sell it to anyone else. See the catch-22 here? These nonprofits are the government. We don't know who's running them, but they get their funding mostly from the government. And according to the IRS, cited in the New York Council of Nonprofits State of the Sector report, hold on to your seat here. There are 119,559 registered nonprofits just in New York City. They're raking in over $100 billion in state, federal, and local grants. And according to the Nonprofit Finance Fund, more than 3/4 of those 119,000, 78% of New York City nonprofits receive funding from state, federal, or local government. In other words, the New York City Council essentially voted to end run the 4th and 5th Amendment to the Bill of Rights because they wanted to stop private home ownership so they can either rent it back to your kids or give it to illegals for free. This is the grift. Start a nonprofit, get government funding, which basically makes it a government agency, not a nonprofit. But the Mamdani administration will prop up and probably fund as many of these nonprofits as they need to in order to accomplish their community housing goals that will turn around and rent that new unit that, by the way, gets a tax deduction on being owned in a nonprofit, so it's cheaper for them to own that than regular private ownership like you had before you were forced to sell it. The nonprofit then rents those apartments to whoever the same government giving that nonprofit the grant in the first place, whoever they tell them to, who then not only gives the new tenants, this is the grift, the government then gives the tenants they want to live in there a stipend for rent, but also pays the new nonprofit a subsidy to take in those new tenants because, nobody can afford anything at this point. So the government just gives out free money, essentially turning what was a private business of, me renting out my 6 apartments 6 months ago, a year ago, whatever. It turns it entirely into a government-owned and government-subsidized housing for whatever demographic these libs want to bring in and approve. All the while, the employees of that nonprofit get a paycheck that is also funded by the government grant. That's like a W-2 employee from some nonprofit, some Somali may have started last month that's not vetted. But here's the thing. They're not just passively pushing this private property takeover. They're aggressively doing it. New York socialist governance has raised taxes for private ownership over the last many years here in Manhattan, but very craftily by raising the assessment on the building, not the actual tax rate, so they can go back on their reelection campaigns and say, no, I never raised taxes on you. Here's how they're doing it. Check this out. Let's say your building was previously worth, I don't know, $40 million. It's a building in New York City, okay? You're paying taxes on that assessed value. Now, without passing a law or having a hearing or anything, some bureaucrat with a clipboard just shows up and says, yeah, I think this building's now worth $80 million. Now your tax burden has doubled without them raising the taxes through the legislature, but rather simple stroke of a pen in a dark office by somebody that was never elected. And they're conveniently doing it to buildings that they want to buy. And by they, I mean big government. Perhaps in districts, they need more Democrat votes. You see this game? While Republicans, look, the Republicans are out there being like, let's not break governmental norms, like tossing the filibuster or something like that. While Republicans are whining about that, Democrats are literally seizing private property and violating the Bill of Rights so they can move voters into their needed districts. Districts in cities like New York, where half of New York City is also on Medicaid as well, funded by more taxes like the nearly 9% city and state sales tax or congestion tax or dog tax or income tax or whatever surcharge fee or license they can gen up, paid for by people who do produce in order to transfer that wealth to buy votes. But here's the issue. Leftists keep saying they need to do all these like social programs in order to fix the inequity problem or it will get worse. The problem is they're already doing this in places like New York, but then everything's just getting worse anyway, not better. But then when I point that out, they're like, you're a racist. And the majority of voters who elect people like Mamdani never stop to think, hey, maybe what Democrats are doing doesn't work. And that's why everybody's leaving places like New York. Nope, they never understand that. New York City Councilwoman who went off on this, Vickie Paladino. Vickie, I saw the video of you sitting there saying, like, this is the craziest thing ever. What?
Well, you saw the video. Let me go back to the way you first started this. Your monologue was great. This was passed on December 18th, our final stated meeting for the year. We did not even know this was going to be on the agenda until the night before.
Wow.
What I usually do is I take everything that's happening directly to my camera, at my desk, at my office, so that I could tell people ahead of time what's coming down the pike. Now, COPA, community...
But Vickie, let me stop you right there real quick. You said the night before.
Correct.
Is it feasible that anybody could have actually read? I mean, these things are lengthy bills. Is it probable that most of these people didn't even read this bill before they voted on it?
No, they read it, and they knew exactly what they were doing. My council, everybody needs to understand, everybody knows it already. We had 4 years of it. There's very little change coming to my council. This is what they want. This is exactly what they want. They do not want, Zoran knows, he wants community-owned property. He does not want single-family, two-family, three-family, four-family, anybody to own private homes. We understand, you showed a lot of Manhattan. Everybody needs to know this is happening in every borough. As a matter of fact, the least affected will probably be Manhattan. So now what we got to look at is COPA saying the Community Opportunity Purchase Act. Right there, community. That doesn't mean you, the individual. And when I called it maniacal, when I called it taking away our rights as citizens of the city of New York, private ownership, this is so bad. And it's just the tip of the iceberg of what we see happening. One thing I want to remind people of here, too, if you give me 1 second. I want to tell everybody, Brad Lander's wife, he's our comptroller. Brad Lander's wife is the CEO of Nonprofit New York, and her job is to teach other nonprofits how to get more money from the city. She's got extremely wealthy on the tax dollars that her husband is supposed to be overseeing.
Vickie, let me just pause you because you're throwing a lot out there, and I want to make sure our viewers ingest this. So the comptroller, her husband teaches people how to fleece the comptroller's office?
That's her job. She owns a business where she became extremely wealthy doing this for a living. She is a nonprofit,
I hate this.
head of a nonprofit CEO known as Non-for-Profit New York.
And there's
Her
no conflict
job-
there? Like,
Yeah, just a slight conflict, okay? Now, this is Brad Lander, who's ready to scream racist, racist, racist every chance he gets, especially when it comes to Vickie Paladino, okay? Everybody seems to have a problem when I open up my mouth, and I want to enlighten people on what's going on. This was started by... what's her name? Sandy Nurse. And it was hopped on by at least 40 city council members. And nobody knew about this until they did a Zoom the week before, the night before the stated meeting. We said, is this going to be on the agenda or not? They said, we don't know yet. And then poof, it was on the agenda for the 18th.
yeah.
Where
and then they pushed veteran bills out of the way in order to rush this through.
Correct. 11 veterans bills were knocked off what we approved in committee the day before. Okay, let me go back. The day before the stated meeting in the Veterans Committee, we passed 11 good pieces of legislation that was supposed to be voted on the floor. They disappeared.
Vickie, this is like, I wish I had more time for this because this is just absolutely...
Me too.
Bat poop crazy. I am just sitting here thinking to myself, this city is so screwed. But hey, when we had Dinkins screw everything up and when he was the mayor, Rudy Giuliani came after. So maybe there's a silver lining. Vickie Paladino, we appreciate you fighting for this.
I'm sorry we went so quick.
No, it's great.
You know, I just tried to slam it as much in as I possibly could, Carl.
We got you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow, man, this city might be screwed. Coming up, California tech billionaires threaten to leave the Golden State. About time, but what's the real reason? We're going to talk about that in a bit. But first, thank God Tim Walz never became our vice president because the things he has accomplished in Minnesota and their whole Somali fraud debacle is getting even worse. I wish the rest for the 49 states next.
Federal agencies urge every family to have an emergency radio. During any disaster, electrical power may get cut. The emergency radio gives you the vital information you need. Newsmax wants you to have the Dynamo Emergency Band Radio. It doesn't need batteries and works in any emergencies. It retails for $30. You can get it with the free offer. Call or go online and get the emergency radio today. Your life may depend on it.
At Ancestry, we believe every question about the past is a spark. And when curiosity strikes about the everyday lives of your family, we're here with answers only your ancestors can provide. How is your family woven into 250 years of U.S. history? Find out now, before our sale ends.
From the beginning, America has depended on the courage and resilience of those who serve in our armed forces. For 250 years, they've been there for us without fail, putting their lives on the line, defending our freedom, helping us become the nation we are today. At Wounded Warrior Project, our mission honors the past by building a better future for post-9/11 veterans, service members, and their families. Our life-changing programs and services help warriors improve their mental and physical health, access the VA benefits they've earned, and connect with their communities, their purpose, and each other. Warriors have given us their best. Join us in supporting them through the next 250 years of strength, resilience, and recovery. Visit woundedwarriorproject.org/USA250.
Guys, we are saved. After the massive pressure in Minnesota, Tim Walz has appointed Optum as an independent third party. Now, they've been involved for some time to audit the Minnesota Somali healthcare fraud scheme. But I mean, like, wow, Tim, I mean, great job. Well, actually, no, not at all. Not really. Optum is a subsidiary of United Healthcare Group. And United Health Group is the group that plays a significant role in providing Minnesota health care, i.e. it gets tons of money for it, primarily through two main businesses, United Healthcare, the insurance arm, and Optum, the health services arm. They're also a major local employer and hub for technology for the health industry. Oh, it gets better. United Healthcare is headquartered and in nowhere else but Minnesota. And they already held a multi-year contract with the Minnesota Department of Health and Human Services to manage care for Medicaid beneficiaries starting back in 2022. Now, this included programs like Families and Children Medical Assistant, prepaid medical assistance programs, Minnesota Care, and others. The contracts were awarded in late 2021 and renewed in subsequent years, making United Healthcare the first and only for-profit HMO in Minnesota's Medicaid managed system. Here's where it gets really juicy, though. As CEO of United Healthcare, April 2021 until his assassination in December of 2024, Brian Thompson oversaw the company's government programs division, which directly included state Medicaid contracts like those in Minnesota. He was assassinated right after Minnesota reinstated its ban on for-profit HMO companies, eliminating his company from service. So again, not making any accusations here, but just asking the question, did the CEO know about this fraud? And since his contract was canceled under the new Minnesota for-profit healthcare company ban, I mean, like, these are all logical questions that I just want answers to. But real quick, just to recap how crazy this is, the group that Tim Walz appointed has an extremely vested interest in not only making no changes at all, because a lot of the money flowing into these nonprofits or home health centers was also being paid to the group that Timmy Walz just sent to audit them. And I'd gamble that they probably have legal exposure in this scheme too. I mean, just when you thought it couldn't get any more corrupt, there you go. And this better not get memory hold like Act Blue or whatever that was referred for criminal charges months ago. I mean, like, nobody's been charged for that. They're on track to raise, I think, $3 billion this year on that platform. Whatevs. Joe Pags, host of the Joe Pags Show. Sir, it's all just dumb.
Well, it's more than dumb, but the fact that you're covering it, Carl, means that we're both white supremacists somehow. I don't know if you saw this dork Walz. He decided that white men are the problem in the Somali community where they're defrauding people of billions of dollars. 60 people have been convicted. What bothers me about this, Carl, I know that it bothers you too. We're very like-minded with this. We like J.D. Vance. We like Pam Bondi. But they both come out to talk about how great Nick Shirley was in uncovering all of this fraud that's going on in Minnesota. How hard would it have been to have somebody from the DOJ go and knock on those doors? How hard would it have been for the vice president to say, hey, somebody from the executive needs to go their ass to Somaliville in Minnesota and pull on some doors and check out why they're misspelling learning on the front cover? Well, how hard would that have been? Again, you and I covering it, that's great. Nick covering it, that's wonderful. Like you just said with Act Blue, what's going to happen now?
Right. Exactly. The other thing, too, Joe, is the fact that the governor appoints the person to investigate all the fraud in the company that he just appointed. I mean, it's just like, whatever. Anyway.
Well, Carl, let me piggyback with this. And I know that you already know this, but the subsidies that the Democrats are arguing about continuing, the COVID subsidies, those are going to places like United Healthcare. Yeah. They're going to health insurance providers. They're not going to anybody who's in need. Then the health insurance providers get to use that money and dole it out how they wish, and I guess keep the profits along the side. The Democrats today, Carl Higbie, are fighting to extend the $250 billion in subsidies that aren't necessary. Billions of it now we're finding out was doled out fraudulently.
It's so crazy. And remember that Leering Center that Nick went to?
Yes.
Look, it had no kids. And then now two different things are happening at the same time. First, this woman came up with some wild excuse of why nobody was there. Roll this.
So I won't go into any detail about whether or not any of these have any open investigations. I will share that our team was notified that Quality Learning Center closed just over a week ago. And I believe the details that were given at that time were around space concerns. And that's what was shared.
Right. So that's been closed down for a week, apparently. But I guess the Somali community didn't get that memo. They were going to lose their gravy train and got all their people to start bringing their kids to that the same day that woman was saying that it was closed.
So, I mean, Carl, it closed the week before. And that's the only reason why Nick Shirley didn't fund anybody there. Now, it's reopened today. Now, I believe that one had a capacity of 99 kids. Today, that video that you're showing, I think, showed 22 showing up.
Right.
So somebody said, get some kids and send them to the Leering Center. I mean, at the end of the day, this is fraud on top of fraud on top of fraud. I just did a video on Instagram. I don't know if you caught this yet, Carl. Yeah. But the video is Jacob Fry, the Minneapolis mayor, speaking Somalian for 2.5 minutes. I kid you not. There is something wrong with these people.
And the chief of police over there gave a whole address in, like, Somalia, whatever.
If you believe in Jesus, the Somalis are like Jesus, he said. I don't know if you saw that, yeah.
Yes, with their IQ of 67 on average. Joe Pags, pleasure as always, sir.
Merry New Year, Carl. Good to see you.
You as well. All right, coming up, remember when Tim Walz signed a driver's license for all bill back in 2023? Seems like that guy's been cooking up fraud schemes in Minnesota for a while now. We get that in our Culture Clash.
I'm John Glasgow, and whether the story is right here in New York City in a courthouse or at the border wall in Arizona, we're going to be boots on the ground to bring you all the facts to make sure that you get the story straight, because that's what's important to us right here at Newsmax.
Nearly home. Who done it?
We're looking for a house closer to everything, but we don't know where to start.
Find it with Realtor.com. With Real Commute, it's easy to find a home closer to what's ever close to your heart. Do y'all recycle? Realtor.com.
Don't kibble your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, Bat.
But what's wrong with this? It's premium stuff.
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means it's ultra-processed at extremely high temperatures that destroy the nutrients in the food. But at Dr. Marty, we gently freeze-dried premium meats, fruit, and vegetables, locking in their nutrients.
Never kibbled.
You got it, kid, and they're gonna love it.
Eric fought for freedom. He sacrificed his future. My son was 21 years old when he was shot in the head. He's still very young.
Did you protect them guys?
Yeah.
The tragic events of September 11th changed our nation and inspired a generation to serve. Today, many of those veterans urgently need your help.
At Wounded Warrior Project, it is our honor to serve this generation of injured veterans.
I am proud to have served under the flag, but I was not the only one to come back with stage 4 cancer.
After I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, likely because of chemicals from my deployments, my mom was lost, my dad was lost. He couldn't fix it. Wounded Warrior Project found us.
I'm gonna need help for the rest of my life. The Wounded Warrior Project makes me feel great when I see that logo, knowing that somebody's gonna be there for me.
With a gift of just $19 a month, you will provide, at no cost to warriors, programs and services that can change a person's life forever.
We need to support our men and women who go off to fight these wars for us. I'm extremely grateful because there were times where I would pray that he would just get through the night.
Please call or go online with your gift of $19 a month, and we'll send you this limited edition blanket honoring the 250th anniversary of American independence and freedom.
With the new generation coming up, they did not grow up with 9/11. They didn't see it on TV. It means the world to us that you have not forgotten the sacrifice that our family did.
Please give a little to those who gave so much for us.
Call or go online at honorwarriors.org right now.
Every day, bumps and bangs happen. Bruises are optional. Used daily, dermatologist recommended Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream can help restore your skin's natural barrier and reduce the appearance of bruises. If you have mature skin and bruise easily, get Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream in the first aid aisle and get back to having way too much fun.
Well, before we get to it, breaking news, the HHS has actually frozen all child care payments to the entire state of Minnesota, stating that they call for administration and children and family payments will require justification and receipt or photo evidence before payments to states. Hey, also, by the way, remember when Tim Walz signed that law that gave driver's licenses to basically everybody in 2023?
It's done.
A
packed room at the St. Paul Armory erupted after the governor's signature made driver's license for all the law of the land.
But hidden in that law, people are automatically registered to vote when they apply for, renew, or change information on a driver's license, or an instruction permit, or a state identification card. Now, this automatic voter registration happens. AVR, the system, was also signed into law. The previous applicants had to opt in by checking a box, but now eligible individuals are registered by default unless they opt out. The process is supposed to include verification of U.S. citizenship, but...
So we give driver's licenses to anyone here. You don't have to be a citizen. You don't have to, which is a photo ID. So if someone comes in, they register, they have the driver's license, but they have an incorrect social or no social or whatever. So then they become incomplete. But if they walk in to vote with their driver's license, does that make them all of a sudden now okay?
Designation on the roster for someone whose registration had been incomplete, if they present the election judge with that acceptable identification document, that would clear the challenge from the roster and they would be permitted to cast a ballot.
Yeah, so you see, you're auto-enrolled to vote, and only after 4 to 6 weeks do you receive a mail notice with a 20-day window to opt out. And if you don't opt out, or you shouldn't have been registered in the first place, you just automatically get to vote. Even 16 and 17-year-olds can pre-register and automatically become fully registered at 18. Ashley Brasfield, reporter at the Daily Caller, and Brielle Appelbaum, general partner at Inspire Capital. Okay, Ashley, this seems fraudulent and with a lot of holes in it.
Yeah, very tricky, Carl, of these Democrats in Minnesota. I know all Minnesotans really trust the state government at this point after all this Somali fraud. And of course, Tim Walz signing this into law, as you said, with his tampons in men's bathrooms. It's something that's very trustworthy, obviously. But you know, what's funny about this law is they have human verification that's checking with a lot of these identifications, which I don't know how many people believe that with what's going on with the Minnesota state government currently. And I think that one of the most convenient facts of all this is don't worry, if you want to opt out, they'll send it to you in Somali. I think that's just reflective of what's all going on in Minnesota currently.
Yeah, this. I feel like this is eating gas station sushi in Death Valley. But anyway, there's more fraud from the left here too, Brielle. According to a new HUD report, there were some suspicious payments going on in it was a $5 billion rental assistance program under Joe Biden. Now, HUD officials said that a, quote, large concentration of the suspicious payments went to New York, California, and Washington, D.C., with 30,000 dead people getting funds.
Look, it's not just 30,000 people. I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're looking at 3 Democratic-led states that do zero income verification. It's all self-attestation using W-2s or 1099s. We are in the modern age, the 21st century. Leaders need to be looking for technology that allows them to verify 1099s, Cash App, Venmo, withdrawals, wire transfers, because we would be able to be seeing what's happening. The money is moving. We see it every day on Wall Street. Why can't we look into the everyday voters' homes, their pocketbooks, and see what's actually going on, just like we do when they file their taxes? Yeah, it's shocking to me. But Ashley, get this. This clown is actually running for Congress in Florida, your home state, Brielle. Oh, boy. Okay. His platform is 8647. Mark Davis sharing this post saying 8647 on my head, 8647 on my car. This isn't merch. It's a mission. Let's roll. And I'm like, yo, bring your homies over to my thing, and your new merch will be a body bag if you try. I mean, these libs are unhinged.
Yeah, well, the funny thing, you call him unhinged and a lib, but he's really not a lib, actually, Carl. He's actually running in Sarasota area of Florida, which is widely conservative. I think he has a low chance of winning here, but he's also getting funded by Act Blue. But currently, he's voter registered as, I believe, an independent or not applicable to any candidacy. So that's kind of one of the things. He's fooling the Democrats in a lot of ways with this, it seems like. And of course, his background is in 8 years in the Air Force and also in corporate America. So that's who you want to send to Washington, D.C., Americans and Floridians. I'm currently in Florida right now, and I don't think that's a winning message.
Yeah. Well, Brielle, you wanted to weigh in on this, too.
Believe you me, Florida's 17th district is won by Vern Buchanan. Vern Buchanan's district is solidly red. But what it isn't is it's zero tolerance for people who threaten the president's life and the life of the presidency. It's wholly inappropriate for somebody to be running for public office who doesn't respect the rule of law, who doesn't respect the office of the presidency and even Congress.
Yeah, well, it's like one of these guys is never going to be able to get a job in the district ever again anyway. So.
No, he's just got a one-way ticket to Alligator Alley.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe on the next, I don't know, Venezuelan drug boat. So, Ashley, the other thing is, this is like the don't believe your lying eyes sort of thing. This is 100% real. The document from the UN of March of 2000, the replacement migration is what it's called. The entire purpose is in this document by the UN is talking about replacing the populations of Western nations with foreign birth and foreign immigration and then pushing our birth rates down with things like high costs and things like, I was called a conspiracy theorist for bringing this up 10 years ago.
I know, that's what I was just about to say, Carl. It's all a conspiracy, remember? But this is from 2001, this study that the UN put out. So this has been a long time coming. It goes all the way from 1995 to 2050 to determine in different scenarios, I believe 5 overall, of how do we, implement migration into these nations with falling birth rates. Places like Korea, Italy, United Kingdom, France, United States, all these developed countries. And of course, I think where our mind goes is places like the United States, where we have Latin American countries coming up across the border, as well as Muslim countries that have a huge problem, specifically on our southern border and in Europe, coming into places like France and the United Kingdom. So it feels a little bit, put your tinfoil hat on right now, but it's not the case, obviously.
I sleep in my tinfoil hat, Ashley. Brielle Appelbaum as well. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, coming up, California's mass exodus, billionaires and tech leaders, I can't believe it took them this long to leave the Golden State in droves. What's sparking the outrage? Dr. Michael Savage is going to join me next on this.
Hi, I'm Katrina Ziff. I've worked on the red carpet, I've worked at Vogue magazine, and now I work at Newsmax, and I couldn't be happier because it's all about bringing the most important stories in the world directly to you.
Hi, I'm Ben Cozy. Isn't traveling a pain in the neck? You're cramped, uncomfortable, and forget about getting any rest. There's nothing cozy about airplane seats or hard plastic benches, and those so-called travel pillows, they just don't cut it. You don't need another travel pillow. You need Be Cozy, the world's most comfortable neck pillow. Trapped in the middle seat? Wrap Be Cozy around your neck to stop chin drop, bobblehead napping. Smashed up against the window? Fold Be Cozy over and tuck it onto your shoulder for super side support. Frequent flyer miles got you sitting aisle? Turn Be Cozy to the side for the perfect pillow position. Everyone wants to be cozy, so get the world's most comfortable travel neck pillow and be cozy just like me, Ben Cozy. You get to be cozy. Everyone gets a Be Cozy. Only Be Cozy has patented overlapping arms so you get double support and the comfort you need in any seat on any trip. Go online right now and get this exclusive TV offer. Buy one Be Cozy, get one 50% off. Get yours now.
Hey guys, Viagra is not your only option. Rove Sparks act fast and stay active longer. They aren't pills. Sparks dissolve under your tongue to reach your bloodstream for speedy results. Connect with a provider at rove.co/sparks.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online and save $45. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS. That's urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS.
People always ask, why Patriot Gold Group? With over 10,000 clients to date and over $1 billion in transactions. Not a single complaint on the Better Business Bureau. Consumer Affairs top rated for 9 years in a row. Over 2,000 5-star reviews. The only company nationwide where you, the client, work directly with an owner. Home of the no fee for life IRA. Gold is up 80% in the last 28 months, 275% since Lehman Brothers collapsed. We are patriots protecting patriots. Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 888-528-4290 before it's too late. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer 9 years in a row. Call now, 888-528-4290.
Well, well, well. Remember how, or I don't know, every economist told liberal states that if you keep taxing the rich, they have the means to leave. Well, after years of data showing that people are fleeing California, New York, and other liberal states for places like Texas or Florida or Tennessee and other low-tax Republican states, now that California has proposed a wealth tax that will be on the 2026 ballot, retroactive to 2 days from today, and look at that. It'll probably pass because there's a ton of people that this doesn't apply to, and the left has run this campaign of eating the rich. This will be, for now, at least a one-time 5% tax on total net worth, tangible or not. This applies to unrealized returns as well, meaning the value of your home doubled, 5% on the total value. Oh, that's on top of the already astronomical property taxes that's insured by an astronomical home by insurance rates that are super high because California pushed all the insurance competition out, didn't take care of their forests, and raised your cost to insure it for fire coverage, which California has also mandated you carry, and it costs so much that it's probably more than your mortgage at this point. But just for fun, let's see how California functions without their top 1 to 10% of earners, because in America, the top 10% account for about 3/4 of all federal tax revenue. The top 1% pay 40%. The top 50% pay 97% of the taxes. The bottom 50%, which are going to stay in California, only pay 3%. Good luck funding your bridges to nowhere and billion-dollar homeless shelter scams with only 3% of your current revenue. Host of the Savage Nation and California resident, Michael Savage. Sir, this is crazy.
I was a guest on Gavin's podcast, as I mentioned on your show before, and I raised this very issue. I said, Gavin, if you raise taxes 1% more on the, quote, rich, I'm going to leave this state as much as I love the environment. And we had that discussion and that argument. It turns out Gavin is opposing this wealth tax. Gavin has 1 more year in office. And once he leaves, the left in the state will no doubt pass a wealth tax, and it will drive out entrepreneurs and investors. We will no longer see jobs created. Mm-hmm. The economy will collapse even further. There will be no future. So you ask yourself, if I know this, don't they know it? Well, I asked my son, who's much smarter than me when it comes to business, and he said, Dad, don't you understand it? They want all the people of wealth with brains out of the state. They want this huge mass of idiots so they can manipulate them and use them like the serfs that they already are. Well, so you see, we're looking at it from the perspective of a rational, logical mind, Carl.
It's crazy to me.
That's the problem.
Look at this. This is the proposed ballot referendum, though, to your son's point on the math. 5% tax on billionaire assets. That ought to get him a leave. Proposed for November ballot. If it passes retroactively, it'll be applied to, like, 2 days from now. 90% of revenues to healthcare. 200 estimated billionaires. $2 trillion of wealth. They're estimating it'll raise $100 billion and $25 billion in cap right off the get. But, this is not... Like, they're just going to leave and they're going to have no revenue.
Well, they've already left. There's only a few high-tech people, like you mentioned earlier, the Google people, whatever. Elon Musk is still here, I believe. You ask yourself, how come they're going to leave? Why haven't they left? That's the real question.
Right.
People don't understand that the billionaires that we're talking about, the high-end billionaires, actually don't pay a lot of tax. They don't receive money the way you and I do with a check, let's say, for our services provided.
Right.
They receive dividends. A check from the corporations that they've set up, and the amount of money that they receive is tailored so that there's very little tax to be paid on it. Maybe it's $400,000 a year. All their expenses are written off by their corporation, for example. So they do skate and not pay taxes. People like me are not paid by a corporation, and I've had it up to here. I'm paying 16% state tax. Right. I said, Gavin, I'm going. As much as I love it here, I love the environment, I love the birds, the wind, the air, the boating. I'm leaving. Do you understand that?
Yeah, you've got like Ro Khanna behind this. You've got big unions, and Peter Thiel and Larry Page have like, dude, I'm out in like the next 48 hours.
they will leave, and of course the state will collapse once people like they leave and people like myself leave, and thousands of others who pay most of the taxes in the state leave. We support the damn state, and they want to drive out those of us who support it. Did you see on your chart the number one place all this stolen money is going to go? Healthcare.
Yeah.
Because Gavin Newsom signed a law about a month ago saying he wants to make sure every illegal alien gets a gold-plated healthcare system. And I've railed about this for years.
Yeah.
I got sick a number of years ago. I went into an ER room. I was at the back of the line to get treated for a heart attack. It was filled with illegal aliens. They go in if they have a runny nose, Carl. I'll lay it on the line. The whole family comes in. They're all in the emergency room getting gold-plated health care. If a kid gets a runny nose, you know what it costs the state? God knows, $20,000 for that visit. Forget about the $300 aspirin.
The whole system is broken, and it's just got to completely collapse before people start.
It's not broken, though. It's like Walz in Minnesota. They're robbing the money. The money isn't going to the illegal aliens.
That's true. That is also true. Yeah. Well, anyway, Michael Savage, got to leave it right there, brother. We appreciate it.
I'm sorry to bring you more bad news.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's your state, not mine. So I live in the Socialist Republic of Connecticut.
I love the birds. I love the birds. What
Be
can
sure
I
to
do?
check out Savage Nation right here on Newsmax, Sundays at 8. Coming up, the Somali Daycare Center fraud scheme in Minnesota has reporters talking about stand your ground laws. What happened to gun-free zones, I thought? Well, we got that 2-8 Tuesday next.
Poverty is unimaginable. There are people who are struggling.
This is where she washes the dishes.
If you're ever going to allow your Christian faith to rise and to do something for God's chosen people, now is the time.
This is the home of Galina. She's 96 years old.
This is what she had to eat for today.
She has one pot with water and wheat.
My father was killed by the Nazis, and I was an orphan. I didn't know about God. But now, in the cold, hungry nights, I pray for food to the God I've never known. There are good people that love you.
You see the tears. Scripture says joy can come in the morning, and you can be the reason.
Right now in Ukraine, elderly Jews are trapped in unbearable poverty. If you will bless these hurting children of Israel, you will receive God's blessing in return. Your urgent gift today of $25 will help rush a survival food box filled with life-saving essentials. Call, scan, or go online now.
I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, I don't know how much longer she could have waited for us to come.
I can't even grow my food anymore. What will happen to me? I'm doomed to starve.
Tens of thousands of elderly Holocaust survivors in the former Soviet Union are living in extreme poverty, hungry, and forgotten. But through the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, we can bring them hope.
It's my favorite food. May you be blessed.
You say to them, we see you and we're here to help.
Please don't delay. Call, scan, or go online now.
Muscle cramps were keeping me up at night, so then I tried Slowmag, the magnesium plus calcium supplement that helps relax tense muscles so I can rest comfortably. And Slowmag tablets have a slow-release formula that's gentle on my stomach. That's why I use Slowmag.
President Trump delivered on his promise to put America first by securing our border, unleashing American energy, and providing the largest tax cut in American history. Now Trump has delivered again by rescheduling cannabis, which was classified as more dangerous than fentanyl. Trump's action will destroy the cartel's illicit black market, expand medical research, and help American seniors and veterans safely receive care, support over 400,000 jobs, and create billions of dollars in economic growth. Thank President Trump for putting America first.
My body is my livelihood, so I take it serious. It all starts with the right plan. Balance of nature just makes sense. Whole fruit and vegetable ingredients, simple.
Lock in 50% off for 1 year.
All right, finally, 2-8 Tuesday, so we can do some gun stuff. Speaking of gun stuff, Politico's senior legal affairs reporter has suggested that, quote, daycare centers might be justified in basically shooting citizen journalists for knocking on their doors. He tweeted out, quote, at some point, the amateur effort to knock on doors of home daycare intersects with robust stand-your-ground laws. Okay, but here's the rub. Well, Minnesota does have variants of castle doctrine, which means if someone breaks the threshold of your home or business, you can justify some sort of bodily harm or death if you're in risk. Minnesota also has a duty to retreat. And this is why libs are morons, because they never actually know the gun laws, unlike us gun owners who obey them very, very closely. Like, I would just like to point out that the guy standing outside of a business that's supposed to be open to the public with an iPhone is not a threat you need to stand your ground on. You can't shoot someone over that. Otherwise, every paparazzi would be dead already. I mean, like, where were these libs during Daniel Penny when he was rescuing Subway patrons from death threats? Cam Edwards, host of Bearing Arms Cam & Company podcast. Sir, I mean, I can't believe he said that publicly.
I can't either, Carl. And I'm really glad that you pointed out that somebody knocking on your door is not a reasonable threat to your life. You know, I mean, this is absolutely absurd. So, yeah, he got it wrong about what the law is in Minnesota, but he also got the entire concept of stand your ground wrong, right? And why? So you could try to own the conservatives. I mean, this is just sheer idiocy on the part of Josh Gerstein. Politico should be embarrassed that they hired him. Gerstein should be embarrassed that he tweeted it out. And I think we're all a little dumber because of it, Carl, quite frankly.
Yeah, and that guy would wet his pants if he ever had to stand his ground against anybody anyway. So, all right, here's a new law in Illinois going into effect on January 1st, requiring guns to be locked up at home. Connecticut has a safe storage law. And what it does is, look, I'm all for safe storage and responsible gun ownership wholeheartedly. I have 3 kids. However, sometimes when you change laws like this, you now are forcing families to buy a $600 gun safe.
That's exactly right. As a matter of fact, we're seeing the Department of Justice sue the U.S. Virgin Islands over its storage mandate. And U.S. Virgin Islands, exactly what you just described, right? They lay out very specifically the type of safe that you have to own. And then, by the way, you have to let the police in to inspect that safe without a warrant, right? You know, I agree with you. We don't want to see kids get access to a firearm. But I got to say, as a father of 5 myself, I have also, and a Second Amendment advocate, I mean, I've covered stories, Carl, where minors have defended their parents or other family members because they're able to access a firearm. And frankly, I think this comes down to parental choice, right? Like, when it gets to a certain age, 12, 13, 14 years old and above, you know, those kids may very well have years of experience. And you, if you are a mom or dad and you believe that that child is responsible enough to access that firearm, if God forbid somebody's breaking in their home, I think as a parent, you have the right, or you should have the right, to make that choice.
And look, my 12-year-old daughter is basically training for the boogaloo with me. I mean, she's been fast stripping out of helicopters and shooting with body armor on combat courses since she was 8. All right, I'd take her more than probably anybody else that I know on my street. Adults. All right, here's another one where hunting and gun laws and all these things kind of merge together. Cougar sightings in Michigan have hit an all-time high. 27 sightings out of the confirmed 161 sightings since 2008. But the people out there like, hey, you still can't hunt these things because we refuse to acknowledge that they actually exist. Now, this is a mountain lion. It will carry a child into a tree and eat it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, listen, the North American system of game management is something that we've relied on for over 100 years, right, to maintain wildlife populations. And that includes the populations of predators. So, again, this isn't about, you know, hunting cougars into extinction anymore. This is about hunting wolves into extinction. But it is about maintaining a balance, right? And you've got to balance out that wildlife with, you know, domestic livestock, right, with the ranchers and the farmers who you know, when they lose cattle, they're losing, you know, dollars, right? That impacts their bottom line. And then, you know, I think to a lesser degree, there is that public safety standpoint, right? I mean, I think cougar attacks are very rare. But again, I think it comes down to, again, just basic common sense, right?
Yeah.
What can the ecosystem support? And if it supports, you know, a cull of some cougars, well, then that's what the science should dictate.
Exactly. And that's in Connecticut. Same thing with bears over there. They're tearing everybody's doors off their houses. Cam Edwards, pleasure, my man.
Thanks. You too, Carl.
All right, before we go, imagine being fined for parking on your own driveway. Yep, that's next.
The press won't report the real story.
The American people are actually very smart.
Ridiculous statements.
These guys are just plain weird.
Actual scandals.
Even the immunity decision. I mean, that decision was so misreported.
That's my job, and I aim to do it every night.
Samaritan's Purse is ready to show the love of Christ to people in the most difficult circumstances. But we can't go without you. With your support, we can build homes, heal hearts, provide critical relief, and bring hope to a world in need. Donate now at Samaritan'sPurse.org. Let's get to work in Jesus' name.
At Ancestry, we believe every question about the past is a spark. And when curiosity strikes about the everyday lives of your family, we're here with answers only your ancestors can provide. How is your family woven into 250 years of U.S. history? Find out now, before our sale ends.
There are only a few men I'd trust with my life. Two of them built this wallet. I've known the guys behind Proof for nearly 20 years, and we've been through hell and back together. When they told me they were building the wallet, I just said, bill me now, I'm in. This isn't some fashion piece. This isn't just some trend. These wallets are a direct reflection of the kind of men who built it. It's built to last, built to function, and designed to carry everything you need and more. If anything happens to it, they'll take care of it. No questions, no fine print. If you knew the guys who created this wallet, you wouldn't carry anything else. Go check them out, because they built this thing right.
Derriere, caboose, booty, badunkadunk. No matter what you call it, if you have hemorrhoids, your tushy is no laughing matter. So don't use a cream that treats your rear end like a joke. Get serious relief with Recticare Advanced Hemorrhoidal Cream. Recticare Advanced is seriously effective with 2 powerful medicines for rapid dual-action relief, soothing the uncomfortable swelling, itching, and pain of your hemorrhoids. For serious hemorrhoid relief for your buns, get Recticare Advanced.
Don't kibble your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
But what's wrong with this? It's premium stuff.
Let's check it out. It's still kibble. And even the best kibbles still get kibbled. Which means they're ultra-processed at extremely high temperatures that destroy the nutrients in the food. Then they have to add synthetic nutrients back in just to meet label requirements.
Are they all like this?
Sadly, they are. These poor pups have low energy, bad digestion, itchiness, and allergies, all from eating ultra-processed junk food for every single meal. But at Dr. Marty, we gently freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, locking in their nutrients.
Real meats, real fruits, real veggies, nothing else. Never kibbled.
You got it, kid. So don't kibble your dog. Dr. Marty will make your best friend healthier, and they're gonna love it, guaranteed.
What if getting older didn't mean living with joint discomfort, brain fog, or low energy? Qualia Senolytic is the only all-in-one clinically tested formula with 9 ingredients designed to help your body clear aging cells. Taken just 2 days a month, this regimen works at the cellular level to rejuvenate energy and support longevity, helping you stay active and energized. With Qualia Senolytic, life truly gets better with age. Start today at qualialife.com/BOGO.
Imagine parking on your own driveway only to be slapped with daily fines because 2 of your tires touched your grass. This happened. A Florida homeowner must pay more than $100,000 in outstanding fees for improperly parking on her own property after the state Supreme Court declined to hear her appeal that argued excessive fines. Now, according to the complaint, Sandy Martinez owed more than $165,000 to the city for trivial code violations, some of the HOA and by the bylaws, too. About $100,000 primarily for parking on her driveway, where only like 2 tires were partially off covering the grass, and more than $60,000 for 2 other cosmetic violations. 6-figure fines for parking on your own property, having a fence fall down in a hurricane. I mean, this is why I hate homeowners associations and all this stuff. Rob, you're down in Florida right now. Man, look at that tan you got, too. You look sexy, baby.
I know. I know. And I appreciate you saying that. That's you're not homophobic to say that. I'm very tan. I haven't seen a cloud in like 4 days. It's been pretty good. Yeah, and I hate HOAs as well.
Raining it cold. Take it away, Rob.
Carl, thanks so much. Good to see you as always.